And midweek is here already. We're broadcasting live from our studios here in Accra. We're also on your digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air. This is the polls on the JoyNews channel. It's on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. We're independent, fearless and credible. Coming up this afternoon on the polls, Chief Justice Anini Yeboah finally responds to what he describes as unwarranted attacks on the judiciary as he cautions Ghanaians to be mindful of how they exercise their rights to free speech.
Always be done within the boundaries of the law. Freedoms everywhere has no absolute value. Simply put, freedom of speech has its limits. This is an incontestable fact, and we should all bear in mind when dealing with institutions of state like the judiciary.
And of course, these are difficult times. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta finally concedes there's an economic crisis as he remains hopeful. An austerity plan with the International Monetary Fund for the next 3 years will bring the Black Star economy back to life.
These are difficult times, but really we are, in the throes of the discussions with the fund. Things are going really well in terms of where we want to land in 3 years.
And we'll hear shortly from the International Monetary Fund, which is describing the talks between both parties as one, which is very constructive. And shortly, also this afternoon, we're paying attention to a meeting which is underway at the Ministry of Education over the controversial decision to prevent prospective doctors returning from war-torn Ukraine from practicing medicine here in Ghana. We'll get you the latest of what's happening at the Ministry of Education. This is The Pulse. It's brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that we're streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. I'm Blessed Sogah. Thanks for choosing us. We'll be back with the details shortly. Also this afternoon, for the very first time, we are hearing from Chief Justice Anini Yeboah, who's waded into criticisms of judges and the judiciary as a whole. Now, according to the Chief Justice, citizens must know that their freedom of speech, just like all the rights, have limits and must be circumspect in attacking the courts. Well, the judiciary in the last few weeks has been in the news following comments by former President John Dramani Mahama, who has called for a change in the leadership of the country's judiciary to repair what he describes as its broken image. Well, we're hearing from the Chief Justice, who's been speaking at the annual general meeting of the Association of Magistrates and Judges, where he's indicating that in the face of unwarranted criticisms, judges must not waver.
Any strong defense of our justice system does not and cannot obscure the fact that it has its fair share of imperfections as a human institution. Like all human institutions, perfection is an impossible goal. This reality lends credence to constant scrutiny with a view to ensuring that our justice system is firmly on the path of professional rectitude and accountability. In this respect, one effective tool is fair criticism. Indeed, appealing against a judgment or order entails criticizing the judgment or the order. It bears emphasizing that the judiciary is not immune from criticism. Indeed, the judiciary needs criticisms, while underlying the freedom of the public in general and interest groups in particular to criticize the judiciary. I wish to reiterate that this should always be done within the boundaries of the law. Freedoms everywhere has no absolute value. Simply put, freedom of speech has its limits. This is an incontestable fact, and we should all bear in mind when dealing with institutions of state like the judiciary. We cannot forbid people from expressing their sentiments in the public sphere, but unsubstantiated and wide allegations against judges, physical and verbal threats and attack on judges are abhorrent and tantamount to attempts of perverting the course of justice. These must not be countenanced as they tend to erode the respect and successes we have chalked up as a nation in our democratic journey to the admiration of the international community.
So this happens to be the very first time we're hearing from Chief Justice Kwesi Aning after John Dramani Mahama went all out on the Chief Justice, accusing him of not providing leadership to ensure integrity within the judiciary itself. The NDC backed the claims and also went ahead to make some further claims that judges and, of course, those who are serving within the bar as well are not being treated simply because of their political affiliation to the opposition party. This is the latest we're hearing from the Chief Justice, but there's also more coming through from the Ghana Bar Association, also appearing to be backing the Chief Justice. So let's get more from Kweku Asante, who's been monitoring that conference, which is currently underway here in Accra. Kweku, let's start off from what it is that we're hearing from the Chief Justice. On what grounds is he, first of all, responding to all of these criticisms?
Like you said, you stated in your lead early on, government and the judiciary in particular have come under intense scrutiny as regards to allegations that they are favoring one political party as against the NDC. Indeed, we heard from former President John Dramani Mahama, who said that until Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah is changed or is removed as Chief Justice, the judiciary would not get its respect from the public. And so the Chief Justice, this is the first time since this barrage of criticism have been coming in, and he's been speaking for the first time, and he's warning that you have freedom of speech, but your freedom of speech has limits. And so it's a note of caution to persons who like to engage in what they have called unwarranted criticism of the judiciary. And so we heard also from the Ghana Bar Association, who have been saying that they are in full support of the actions that are now being taken by the judiciary, and that they stand in readiness to protect the image of the judiciary.
And we're getting a sense that this is a collective position because the event we're talking about has got to do with judges and even magistrates, those working within the lower ranks of the courts, right?
Right. So it's an annual general meeting of the Association of Magistrates and Judges. They meet annually to assess the judiciary. They meet to look at some of the situations and the challenges facing the judiciary. And so the judges are unanimous in their objection to these specific claims. Indeed, we'll play for you a video of the president of the Association of Magistrates and Judges, Justice Kofi, who has also been speaking about what he says are the maligning and the constant barrage of criticism some of their members have had to face in line of their duty.
You would all recognize that the judiciary as an institution and judges in general have been the subject of quite a lot of vitriolic attack and judgments of our courts, even judgments of the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, have been attacked, and the judges who delivered the said judgments have not been spared either. Even the person of His Lordship, the Chief Justice, as head of the institution, has not also been left alone. There have been articles, commentaries by all sorts of people, social commentators, impugning the motives and integrity of judges where matters affecting the judiciary are blown out of proportion. The association must not be understood to be against criticisms of judges or the judiciary. No. Criticism, if it is constructive, helps to improve any system and makes the various actors to sit up. But that is not the same as what we are seeing lately in the press and on social media. We have been attacked, we have been maligned, and all sorts of things have been said about judges. It is my view that evaluating or analyzing judges and their judgments should focus on how judges apply the law to arrive at a result or a decision, but should not be focused simply on what the result might be or which of the parties to the litigation the decision favors.
Quickly, so that's the Association of Magistrates and Judges, obviously barking what it is that the Chief Justice appears to be talking about. We also do know that the opposition National Democratic Congress raised concerns about lawyers. So what's the response from the Ghana Bar Association?
So the Ghana Bar Association, according to its president, Yao Achampon Boafo, says some of the criticism that has been leveled against the judiciary are simply unfair, and that it is not that they are against criticizing the judiciary. What they want to see is for people to be able to point out that these are the specific aspects of a court's judgment that we disagree with. This is what we think the court should have done, instead of a simple blanket attack on the persons of the judiciary. They are serving notice and giving an indication that they are ready to support the judiciary in purging out such persons.
It's a tremendous honor and great pleasure for me to stand before you and deliver a goodwill message from the Ghana Bar Association. The judicial process is not complete without the participation of both lawyers and judges. As a result, it is incumbent upon the bar to assist the judicial system to ensure that the people of Ghana get justice. In a highly politically heated environment like Ghana, there may arise situations where the judiciary may come under unwarranted attack. As I reiterated at the recent bar conference in Ho, the judiciary is not perfect and infallible. However, the proper tools and methods for correcting and improving the work of the judiciary are through constructive criticisms and superior arguments, not acts that target their personalities, undermine their independence, insult the bench, bring dishonor to the administration of justice, and endanger their security and safety. I pledge the support of the Ghana Bar Association to uphold the noble profession and the honor and it is said the only power the judiciary has is public opinion.
Well, so Kweku, that's what we're also getting from the Ghana Bar Association. What do we know about the way forward? Are we likely to see some further engagements in the coming days between the Chief Justice, be it the judiciary and stakeholders, and also the political parties, some of which are raising these concerns about judicial bias?
So, Blessed, this indication was not given at the annual general meeting of the Association of Magistrates and Judges. It's actually a 2-day conference that will end tomorrow, after which there will be a communicating the kind of decisions and the agreements the judges and the magistrates have arrived at. And so it is expected that when they put that out, we'll know exactly what the judiciary intends to do about some of these. But the general sense we are taking and the general sense of information we are getting is that the court is not necessarily interested in seeking out some of these parties who are unduly, in their own words, criticizing the judiciary. They say that people have the right to criticize, and we don't even have to come to you and say that you can say this or you can't say that. But just be measured in your criticism. Just make sure that the specific criticism that you are putting out are factual and it's not against the persons of the specific judges who may have ruled in a specific case. And so in the coming days, indeed, it will not be surprised if more judges now decide to help people for contempt because they might have said things that disparages the judiciary.
So normally, what's the essence of the annual meeting we're seeing happening, where, I mean, judges of the senior courts and then magistrates are all coming together to dialogue? Is it solely focused on what we're hearing about issues relating to judicial bias?
Well, so indeed, some other matters have come up at this annual conference regarding accommodation for judges, delay in the payment of salaries, among others. And so these are all specific issues that the judges have been raising at this plenary, and they'll be discussing it up until tomorrow. Indeed, there's actually a lecture which is actually closed to the public, which is going to be addressed by Justice Alan Broby, a former justice of the Supreme Court, indeed detailing some of the issues that have come up. But it deals with a wide array of issues, looking at the welfare of judges and generally looking at the dispensation of justice by members of the judiciary, be they magistrate or judges or whatever officials and whatever role they play in the justice dispensing system. And so at the end of tomorrow, when this communique is expected to be put out, the magistrate and judges will be dialoguing on a number of key issues that affects them individually in the line of their duty and that which affects the entire judiciary. So it's not just about a criticism, but it's also a wide array of issues on the table.
Any sight of some of the lawyers who were part of that address? I mean, when John Mahama was raising concerns with the judges, because I do understand that some former attorney generals and also senior members of the bar were present. Any sight of them?
So at this event today, there was no official directly linked or related to the Opposition National Democratic Congress there, mainly because it is the Association of Magistrates and Judges Conference. And so the main persons who were there were justices of the Superior Court of Judicature, the Supreme Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and also the lower courts who came there. But we also had the Attorney General, who is the leader of the bar in terms of the hierarchy. He was also there to, send a goodwill message. We also had lawyer Opon, who is the head of the Ghana School of Law. He was also there to send fraternal messages. And so there were no direct officials in terms of a relation with the NDC who were there at this conference. It's not clear if some officials were invited and they did not attend.
Then, thank you, Kweku Asante. Let's bring in Xavier Kujeb, PR for the Ghana Bar Association. Thank you, sir, for your time. You seem to be defending the judges, the believers. Why not engage all stakeholders? So you're able to understand where perhaps some of the opposition party members may be coming from in terms of their concerns regarding how biased the judiciary is to them. Sylvia Kujeb, if you can hear me, I'm just asking if the Ghana Bar Association is considering any further engagements, yes, in the coming days.
To start with, I don't think that, as the speakers by your tape played said, the judiciary is beyond or above criticism. That is not what we're saying. All we're saying is that criticism is good, but it must be constructive, because that is the only way we can build a system as we want it. So it's not as if we are defending anybody. I have said before that the judges also have a role to play. As a judge, I expect you to have three qualities. You must be intelligent, you must be energetic, and above all, you must have integrity. Without integrity, we have no business dealing with you as a judge. So they can criticize, but appropriate means and appropriate criticisms must be made. That is all we are saying.
Yeah, but that sounds, and in fact, I must bring that up, the comments from the Chief Justice sounds almost as though he's threatening dissent. That's how it comes across.
Well, I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way, because let us not forget that the judiciary is made up of human beings. It's a human institution. Judges are human. They make mistakes. But if you want to criticize, the best thing to do as a party, and for that matter as a lawyer or a user of court, is to do a critique of the judge. And a critique, as far as lawyers are concerned, is by saying that as far as this particular ruling or judgment of a court is concerned, you disagree or you agree on the basis of decided authorities that serve as precedents. And also the law, as you know, is based on the evidence before the court. Because to go on appeal, you even need to show that the evidence before the court was not properly used in your case, and the law has been supplied. You just don't do it. So let us not think that it is fanciful or it is just okay for us to criticize. It must be constructive. That is the way we build a system. If you listen to the president of the Magistrates and Judges Association, he himself said they are not saying that don't criticize them, but the criticism must be constructive because they are humans. They learn. But if you think that once you have some feeling that they are not doing well as far as you are concerned, you do a blank condemnation of them, it is not the best. We don't build a system like that.
In fact, in recent times, we've heard from the Speaker of Parliament, for instance, talk about how the Ghana Bar Association is not sharp in criticizing the system. Some even go beyond to say you've become dormant. Why not trigger some level of backroom talk between the opposition party and the judiciary and others who may be having concerns with how justices go about their rulings in these days? We've heard of that proverbial unanimous FC. These are all issues out there, which have the tendency of affecting the smooth delivery of justice within our country. All of these things have come up, and yet we've not heard from the Ghana Bar Association. Is it the case that you're okay with what's happening now?
They have concerns, but if they have concerns, we don't know their concerns. What prevents them? You are asking, why don't we have a conversation with them behind closed doors? what prevents them from letting us know the concerns that they have? Let me give you an example. When they wanted to do the People's Manifesto, you remember they consulted various professional bodies. They came to the Ghana Bar Association. They were led by no mean a person than the former president. There were lawyers there. Harun Adrisi was there, Honorable. All of them, Amaliba, Godwin Tamaklo, all of them were there. So that in the same vein, I expect them to just let us know what the concerns are. Because, look, we are lawyers. We can't just hear things on air or in the media and pick it up. Who do we attribute them to? Who do we address when it comes to such issues? So once they've been able to come to us when they wanted to do their proposed manifesto, I think that it should just be a nice way, in the same way they come to us. So these are the concerns that we have. Then if we don't address them, then they can complain.
Some would say that your president had and I mean by this statement, the president of the Ghana Bar Association had by far the finest opportunity to engage those who are... Yes, I'm talking about the president of the bar, Mr. Yabwafo, who we've just heard from. The belief is had the finest opportunity today of engaging the leadership of the judiciary, i.e. the Chief Justice and magistrates as well. This was an opportunity for the bar to equally demand of some expectations in terms of fairness from the justices. I'm not by this statement saying they're biased, but at least the expectation is that the Ghana Bar Association will equally demand from them, just as you are expecting something from the general public. We've not heard that from the president of the Bar Association. That's something that we should all be worried about, knowing what the Ghana Bar Association stands for and what you've done in the past.
I wasn't at the function, but I've had the opportunity of reading my president's speech after the event. He was very categorical that there are two main group of people as far as justice delivery in Ghana is concerned. So if we want to deliver justice in Ghana well, lawyers and judges must speak. So that is not a platform for him to try to call a meeting to resolve concerns that are being judges and the public or individuals or groups of individuals who are concerned. I have started this interview by telling you that as far as I am concerned as a lawyer, there are three qualities that I expect of a judge. He must be energetic, he must be intelligent to be able to apply the law and do his work well, but above all, he must have integrity. I've said before that if people are not able to resolve issues and they've come to the courts, it is the judges that are supposed to resolve the issues. They should wear the shoes of a God or God Almighty, because people pray to God, they don't get solutions, because these are scientific problems that deserve scientific solutions, so they come to the court. So let us not create the impression that today's speech that was read by the bar president never touched on anything concerning the judges to play their part. It is clear in the speech. I think it was even the opening paragraph, apart from the salutations.
Right. The National Security Minister, I recall, warning judges that there's a link or a nexus between fairness in the judiciary and national security. He's alarmed over some of the judgments in recent times. So, given some of these concerns, what's the expectation of the Bar Association going forward?
Well, to speak to this question, let me first deal with the issue of the National Security Minister's position. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He was speaking as a lay person. I know he's not a lawyer. I know he's not. So I'll forgive him for that. Look, it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court or any court in Ghana decides that, especially the Supreme Court, in all decisions we will agree, provided the decisions are supported by law and evidence on record. There is nothing wrong with that. Does it mean that we should water down our judicial process just because we want to please people? No, because we are building the system for the future. I have come to meet it. I must leave it in a better position for my children's children to come and also inherit. They may not be lawyers, but they are Ghanaians.
So yeah, it's fine if all judges agree. That's what you're telling us.
There's nothing wrong, provided it is support. You know, they don't work in a vacuum. They have procedures they follow, they have the law they apply, and the facts before them. That is why if you go on appeal, you must show that the judge has either misapplied the law or there is some piece of evidence. If it had been used in your favor, you would have won the case, or certain pieces of evidence had been used against you. Or the judge did not instruct himself well, as far as the law is concerned. Because don't forget, judges do not just come out with judgments. They come out with judgment based on the evidence before them and the law. So they can misapply the law sometimes. They may not use the evidence the appropriate way. So when you go on appeal, you show that. So if there's evidence that all these things have been properly done, why should anybody be concerned? Just because people will complain,
Right.
people should change their minds, judges should change their minds? No.
Interesting points there.
The law is not being written by judges.
Right. You've been practicing for quite some time now. Have you seen criticism as sharp as this ever been visited on the bench?
We see them every time, but we see them in what we call the review of Ghana law. There's a journal published by the Council for Law Reporting. If you want to do a thing like this properly as a lawyer, you take the judgment, you critique it based on your knowledge and understanding of the law and the precedents that have been set. And then you apply the law and come to a conclusion that based on the analysis you have made so far, the judges ought to have decided otherwise. It is not about us sitting on radio or meeting at places and talking about it. It means we are not even interested in building our systems. The law develops through processes like this. That is why I started by saying that you do constructive criticism. And this, to my mind, is the best way to do it because it will be recorded for everybody who is interested to go and buy and read.
Anyway, we'll have to leave it here for now. We'll definitely connect sometime later. Sylvia Kuje, spokesperson for the Ghana Bar Association. In fact, there's a lot of development this afternoon as well on some other legal issues because the Ghana Tourism Authority has been accused of using a musician's work without permission or credit to advertise the country to tourists. And we do know the Ghanaian musician, Kirani Ayat, says that he actually reached out to the government for support before shooting his Goda video, but he was turned down. That tweet, of course, we have that coming up for you shortly. This video that we're speaking about was shot in northern Ghana and, of course, features some scenic views and showcases quite a lot. So excerpts of that statement there indicating, first of all, the concerns of the musician, indicating that the president of Ghana has used my video, which is the Goda video, in this ad, and the ad is below there, to promote Ghana. I was actively reaching out to the Ministry of Tourism in 2018. That's 2018, 2019, to use this video to push for tourism in the northern parts of the country and got absolutely no reply. Yet today, it's in an ad and no one reached out to me for permission. And of course, this is beginning to cause a lot of global attention as the BBC is also reporting on this. But let's first of all bring you excerpts of a statement reacting to the claims by the artist. It's by the Ghana Tourism Authority, indicating that attention has been drawn to a tweet by Kirani Ayat and a publication by the Ghana Web portal regarding a video produced by the Ghana Tourism Authority, which has been shared on our platform since 2019 and recently on social media handles of the president. For the record, the footage in question was acquired legitimately from a bespoke creative agency as part of a project in 2018. The video has thus played on several local and international platforms without any issue. The content was used in accordance with the terms agreed with this agency and not as being alleged. So according to Clause 2B of the MOU signed with the agency, in terms of the obligations, the agency is required to deliver some sort of imaginative and impactful social strategies such as content or documentaries for the use of the Ghana Tourism Authority as it so wishes. Agency delivered the content to the authority and the authority used the content in accordance with the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding. Of course, the above notwithstanding, since the authority became aware of the tweet from Kirani Ayat, we have reached out to the agency to deal with the matter. This is without prejudice to any legal options available to the authority against the artist or the agency and vice versa. That's the position of Ghana Tourism Authority. Joining me now is Sarah, and she's actually an expert when it comes to intellectual property. She's an intellectual property attorney, also an author of a book on that. Thank you, Sarah, for your time. So we're seeing this, and it's beginning to cause some global stir, particularly as we're using this set video on an international platform. What do you make of the back and forth between the artist and the Ghana Tourism Authority? For some, it paints the picture that we're not truly aware of the nitty-gritties when it comes to intellectual property. I don't know personally for you what you think about this development.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to comment on this. I would say that I agree with you when you say that we are not really too familiar with the intellectual property rights in general. Copyrights are given to statutory rights given to creators of works that are original. And these works include musical works, audiovisual works. And these rights include the right to reproduction, broadcasting, adaptation, alteration of the work. The rights belong to the owner of the created work. So this owner can exploit the work by licensing it, can exploit it by himself, or can license it to another person to use, or can even assign the whole right to someone else to use the work, or even decide to actually donate the work to someone else. In this case, I have seen the notice from the Ghana Tourism Authority,
Yes.
And I was a bit concerned about the posture, because to say that they obtained it from an agency and so it was legitimately obtained. Yes, they may have obtained that video clip from the agency, but I would advise that they should step back, find out whether the agency actually obtained the rights from the owner.
That's a very critical point. That's a very critical point you're raising, because now they're saying, well, we give the contract out to an agency. That agency is supposed to get us the very best. If they fail to do so, what's the legal implication, for instance, on those who circulate the video and those who even repost it?
So those who actually generated this video, this advertisement, will be liable in law. Those who commissioned them to do the work are liable in law. And the liability is both in the civil way and also criminal. It is an offense in Ghana by our own copyright law to infringe on somebody's copyright. And it even involves a jail term and fine. And so I would advise that if you want to use somebody's work, please, especially for commercial purposes, for personal use, our laws provide for permitted uses of copyrighted work. If your work, the use of the work, does not fall within those permitted uses, then please, you need to seek the consent of the owner of the work. If you commissioned a work and they commissioned it through this agency, we expect that the agency should have done its work by seeking a license from the owner of the work before passing it on to those who commissioned them to do the work.
I'm interested in the criminal liability and what the law says. What's that liability, though?
Yes. Our criminal law provides for, our copyright law has provision for the criminal offenses. It is an offense in Ghana to infringe on somebody's copyright.
Yeah, but
you
here,
find that
I'm sorry for cutting through, but in this case, we find the president of the land also circulating the content on his social media page. This is someone who cannot, for now, by virtue of his position, stand trial in any court. So who's going to take that responsibility, by the way? Because the artist appears to have a challenge with the president circulating the work.
The artist indeed has a cause of action against all those who are using the work to advertise Ghana, because it is for commercial purposes. So she does have a cause of action against them. What I cannot speak to is that, well, the law says it is a crime, it is an offense, but of course, there are other matters that may come to play. I don't have the full facts. What I have is that what I've seen is that notice from the GTA, and also some stories circulating on social media. So I cannot say emphatically that the president will go to jail for doing what he has done. But what I can say is that this owner of the copyrighted work has a right to his work, and a cause of action will arise anytime somebody uses the work without his consent. In Ghana, it appears as if when we use the works of these authors, we assume we do them a favor. We are doing them a favor, so we can just give them anything we want. We can choose to mention them. We can choose not to give them anything, to ignore them. But we have the law, and the law is it's clear. You are not allowed to do that in law.
Interesting. You are an author of... remind me of the title again. Something
monetizing your creativity.
Your creativity is monetizing your creativity is solely a piece of document dealing with some of these hurdles, intellectual property and related matters. So what do you, for instance, put across in that book when it comes to recommendations for people who may be using creative work for commercial purposes?
So in that book, I have spelled out the rights of the owners of the works. I have also spelled out how they can commercialize their works, and I've also stated how they can enforce their rights. And the enforcement, as I have mentioned, includes the civil as well as the criminal aspect. So when you read that book, it gives you step by step what steps you need to take in order to enforce your rights. So this gentleman, for instance, if he gets hold of this book, will tell him what steps he needs to take. He needs to consult an IP lawyer who can start taking steps on his behalf. You don't necessarily have to pursue the civil and then the criminal aspect. You may also choose alternative dispute resolution. There's mediation facilities at the Copyright Office. The Copyright Administrator has powers to mediate in matters like that. So he can opt to go to the Copyright Office for mediation in this matter. But I would also advise the GTA to actually step back and reconsider their position if what I am reading is true. If that is the whole story, then I would advise that they step back and reconsider their position. Because in that notice, they have even stated how long they have been infringing on the gentleman's rights.
Yes, as far back as 2018.
Yes, exactly. So it goes to show that probably they are not too much aware of the implications of what they have stated in their notice.
Okay, so let's wrap up, and let me take your thoughts on what we should be doing as a nation in terms of creating much more awareness on intellectual property rights.
As a nation, I believe that most of us see intellectual property rights as an abstract phenomenon. It's a concept, an abstract concept. Meanwhile, it is very practical. It's a day-to-day matter. It concerns our day-to-day activities. It is only when the issues arise that we realize that, indeed, this thing really works. For instance, this had happened. So because of that, other creators will know that, yes, if somebody infringes on my right, I have a right to take the person on. Creativity needs to be encouraged. Creators need to be motivated. And that is why we have the intellectual property laws in the first place. In other jurisdictions, you cannot do that. You cannot just infringe on somebody's work and assume that it is okay, or assume that you are doing the person a favor. You will be slapped with a huge sum of, damages for doing that. But over here, we don't do that. So probably the courts may also look at that direction, look at the kind of compensation, the kind of damages they give to artists or creators who litigate in these matters. Because from my reading of the decided cases in Ghana, usually the compensation is usually on the low side, I must say. So probably the judges would also look at a more deterrent compensation for these creators whose rights are infringed. And when we actually practicalize intellectual property, we take up our rights, we know what our rights are, and we take steps to enforce our rights. In no time, everybody will be aware of intellectual property rights. Because I know that if I take something that does not belong to me, just as if I take somebody's right, somebody's tangible asset, the person can take me on. Similarly, if I take somebody's intangible assets, definitely the person will have a right against me, and I don't want to bear the consequences of that. So as a nation, we need to actually practicalize this IP. Let's enforce our rights, and through the enforcement of our rights, a lot more people will be aware of that. So I encourage this gentleman to take well, I'm not asking him to take anybody on, but it's a good thing that he has brought it to the limelight for everybody to know what is going on.
Yeah, this is right anyway if he takes anyone on. Sarah, would have to leave it here. Sarah Anko, author of Monetizing Your Creativity. There's a lot to learn from that content. She's also an intellectual property attorney. Thank you for your time here on The Pulse. Still to come, these are difficult times. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta finally concedes an economic crisis as, of course, he remains hopeful. An austerity plan with the International Monetary Fund for the next 3 years will bring the economy back to life. We'll deal with those matters when we return shortly.
These are difficult times, but really we are, in the throes of the discussions with the fund. Things are going really well in terms of where we want to land in 3 years.
And you're welcome back. These are difficult times. The words of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta as he finally concedes Ghana's economy is bedeviled with an economic crisis. At a news conference today, Ken Ofori-Atta says a bailout deal with the International Monetary Fund will be reached before the end of the year, and outcome of it incorporated into the 2023 budget. A team assessing Ghana's economy is in town, engaging government on a proposed $3 billion credit support from the IMF to help resuscitate the Ghanaian economy. The IMF describes the ongoing engagements as constructive. So that's the assessment of the IMF in terms of ongoing negotiations. Well, the talks have entered day 3 today. On the table is a 7-point resolution contained in the government plan of action for funds support. So here's Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announcing Ghana's plan at a news conference earlier today.
We have not reached any agreement with the fund on the parameters of any debt operation as we are in the process of completing the debt sustainability analysis. Government shall continue to actively engage all stakeholders in a clear and transparent manner as we seek to fast-track the IMF negotiation process. Ghana needs a viable domestic financial system to support its development program, especially in these 3 years with limited access to international capital markets. Therefore, everything must and will be done to protect our financial sector, and there must be room for a win-win conversation through extensive stakeholder engagement with both our domestic and external investors. Ghana has always had a collaborative approach with its partners, and we shall, I'm confident, come out of an historic arrangement. This is a government that protected the savings of 4.6 million Ghanaian depositors with the reform of the banking and financial sector. Even in our early days, we owe it to the economy and Ghanaians to keep protecting it. The sanctity and the well-functioning of the financial system is sacrosanct, and we need the support and trust of all Ghanaians to deliver this. Let us join hands to get this done. The Great Celtic Miracle in Ireland in the 80s was a result of such collaboration, especially with Labour, and we shall also be blessed with the Ghana Miracle. The analysis for the debt DSA, debt sustainability analysis, is rigorously going on, and that would inform us by the end of these 10 days as to what we are going to specifically do in various areas: fiscal adjustment, structural reforms, debt operations, etc. But let's rest assured that ASIS want for us to be a very collaborative society. We will work with our domestic investors as per through the committee, work with our external investors, and come up with a win-win solution that, as I mentioned, will be an historic solution that has not been seen before. We have gone through as a nation very difficult moments, and really we are very comfortable that it can be done. But going on this is also we reaching out and people reaching out to it, to us, to build in a constructive way, because that is really important for us to have that peace and harmony, speak that one language, and ensure that the Black Star is where it should be. So yes, I'm confident, difficult periods, but we have done it before, and the battle is indeed the Lord.
Finance Minister. Let's hear from Isaac Adongo. He's the Bolga Central member of Parliament, also a member of the Finance Committee. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So you've heard from the Finance Minister. He says engagements will continue in the coming days. Have you been engaged as a committee, the Finance Committee, knowing that the IMF team is in town and that government would have to speed up or expedite work on the letter of intent and other requirements that may be necessary in the coming days?
I'm not aware of any engagements. At least I've not been invited to any such engagement, so I cannot speak to an engagement with the Finance Committee. Listening to the Finance Minister, quite clearly is that it's been very difficult to hide the reality of our economy. You cannot be saying that your DOS sustainability analysis is still ongoing, but you repeatedly talk about a win-win conversation with investors and both domestic and external investors, and particularly the try to allay the fears with the banking sector. That should tell you that the analysis of our debt sustainability situation is quite clear to the minister. And it is quite clear to everybody that we are in an unsustainable situation. And the fact of being in an unsustainable situation is that there is no clarity in terms of the policy instrument.
I'm sorry, but when you say that, the Finance Minister comes through to say it's commentary, he refers to, for instance, Bloomberg's analysis on debt sustainability.
You cannot be appealing to investors. You cannot be appealing to the banking sector that you owe over 100 billion out of the 131 billion deposit. Okay, the banking sector has pumped in 100 billion in government securities out of a deposit of 131 billion. Is that not scary? And for you to be speaking English to them at a point where you should be telling them that your debt is sustainable and whatever happens, you know your debt is sustainable. But you are talking about the fact that you'll be engaging them and investors on a win-win conversation. Should tell you quite clearly that you have something to do with meeting the obligations of investors and our banking sector. It is as simple as that. You don't need, listen, the debt sustainability analysis started from the very day that we took a decision to go to IMF. It's been almost 4 or 5 months. You're telling me that we still are doing the debt sustainability analysis and we don't have a clear focus on what the debt sustainability situation is. And yet the IMF does not lend into an unsustainable situation. In other words, the IMF can have a policy program with you that does not involve funding if your debt is unsustainable until you have been able to engage your creditors in order to bring your debt to sustainable level, which normally would happen with a restructuring. And when it comes to a restructuring, whichever way you take it, people who you owe will not go back home the same. Whether you are going to prolong the repayment, which they would have had earlier, whether you are going to have a conversation around existing obligations relating to interest payment, whether or not even the exact quantum that you owe, you think that you can pay all the quantum. Whatever happens, nobody goes home the same with a restructuring. That is a fact of life. You cannot do anything about it. But the point that I'm making is that the minister seems to be speaking this language every time. On the 24th of March 2022, when they descended from Pediase, was the language different from this? How many months down the line? Where are we? He would finish this conversation and get into his office. And when he turns on the computer and look at his dashboard, he would see that he's currently borrowing at 31% on a 91-day treasury. And that he's unlikely to get even 31% when he goes to the market the next time. And that the market is likely to be going for 45% by next month when he needs to roll over. That is the reality that he will see on the screen.
For the finance
the reality
minister,
that he will see is that the inflation today is 33%, and the rhetoric of March 24th has not reduced the inflation. He will realize that the cedi is now trading around 11 cedis to the dollar. That is the reality. He will also face the fact that it only spent over 5 billion, and that he's not able to fully pay the compensation on his way.
So Isaac, the point is, this is a build-up to say that definitely there'll be a need for debt restructuring. He's denying some of these claims in the address today.
He did what?
So I'm saying that all that you're telling us about is a lead-up to...
Who denied?
The finance minister. He says a debt restructuring.
Of course, he would deny. But why is he appealing to investors if his debt is reasonable? If he can meet the obligations of investors, why does he need to engage in a win-win conversation with investors if you can pay them? Okay? You don't engage investors for a contractual agreement you have already signed off, taking the money and used in any conversation. You pay them. The fact that you will be engaging them means that something is wrong and you need them to shift their position from the original position. That is a restructuring. When we say a restructuring, it doesn't mean you are not going to pay them. There are several forms of restructuring. It could mean that instead of me paying you next year, can we make it next 2 years? Instead of me paying you a one bullet next year, can I pay you installment over another 4 years? In any case, the person doesn't go home with his own money per the original agreement. That is a restructuring. So you cannot be speaking clearly the language of restructuring and say you are denying. What are you denying? Clearly, there's no denying. You can see that. Unless you don't understand what restructuring is, you will not see what he said to be a denial. This is somebody trying to find a diplomatic language to paint up what is clearly a dire situation. He is not able to pay the full compensation of the wage bill. What he's doing now is that he pays you your net salary into your bank account. And then he pays you the deductions for your taxes to GRE because that money comes back to him. He does not pay for your pension, so he's jeopardizing your future when you go on pension. And now owes pension fund, particularly SNAIT, over 5 billion as we speak today. And you are saying he's denying something? Look, he's not able to pay deductions of workers who have taken facilities from financial institutions and say, take the money as source and pay to Eastwich or pay to whoever. They are not able to do that. He is not paying those obligations. You are deducting from workers' union dues, and you are not paying the union dues. So it means that your wage bill, you are not even paying for over 50% of your wage bill. And it's been like this for 9 months. 9 months. And you are saying he's denying what? And he's talking about miracles. Of course it has to be a miracle. He's talking about historical, program. Of course it has to be historical because we have not been here before. We've not been to a situation where we are in the ditch that we are. So anything that has to be done has to be historic. That is what it is. The reality of the fact is that you are collapsing our banking sector. The banking sector that you claim you reform is now, the financial sector now stands on only a banking sector, out of which the banking sector is doing business with basically only government. If the banking sector takes deposits of 131 billion, and you government alone, you are the only one that can come and borrow 100 billion of that. Do you call that a banking sector? That banking sector is equivalent to a brokerage sector. Basically, financing government needs and not the needs of the entire economy.
Okay.
And that is where we are now. These are realities.
Right.
You can look at the recently released summary economic and financial data, and you can see what I'm telling you. So you don't need the Minister of Finance who is trying to quell fear and panic, who doesn't want people to act rationally, to continue to deceive them, only for them to lose their money, That is what he's doing.
In fact, there are more reactions greeting this. Honorable Isaac Adongo, I'd like to urge you to just hold on for us briefly, because the labor unions as well are reacting to this IMF conditionality, because those in the public universities here in Ghana, namely the University Teachers Association of Ghana, the Ghana Association of University Administrators, Tertiary Education Workers Union, in fact, all those within the tertiary level have been reacting to this news of the IMF conditionalities and how that's likely to affect them. My colleague Samuel Kojo Brace has been interacting with them. There in your shots is one of the executives of UTAG. Honorable Isaac Adongo, if we could just listen to the reaction of organized labor on their fears on the IMF program. Let's get that and get your reaction.
Universities. Now we have reached an agreement at the negotiation table. One of the things we agreed was that in the past, the fuel allowances that we were enjoying were adjusted any time that the fuel was adjusted at the, on the market. And that created some level of disparity, some level of frustrations for the government. So being a very sensitive people, we agreed that, look, we can do this biannually. So at least twice every year, there should be that adjustment. Following the agreement that we reached, it took over a year before the government had decided to vary or to bring the new rates. In fact, our fuel allowances were pegged at 6.05 Ghana cedis. It took us a very long time for them to act. Even before that, they had written that they were no longer going to peg the fuel allowance to the new rates that were on the market, and they wanted to freeze it. And we said, no, that is not what we had agreed. Through some negotiations, they agreed and moved it from 6.05 Ghana cedis to 10.99 cedis. Now, this fuel allowance affects not just the fuel allowance, but also the commutation allowance and the car maintenance allowance. These are calculated based on a certain number of gallons. So once you adjust the fuel allowance, then automatically it affects the car maintenance allowance and then the commutation allowance. Now, subsequent to the adjustments, some of the universities started applying these new rates. In fact, these new rates even started from just 1st July. Now, once some of the universities started applying these new rates, another communication then comes from the Ministry of Finance to say that no, this time the rates that we adjusted affects only the fuel allowance, but not the commutation allowance and the car maintenance allowance. And we said that no, that is an anomaly, because over the years and through the MOAs that we have signed, these other allowances, the off-campus as well as the commutation, is pegged to gallons. So once you have changed the fuel allowance, then it must also affect the car maintenance as well as the off-campus allowance. This is the simple thing that we have been talking about. And then the government side is saying that no, they have varied it per the communication they have written. And we are saying that no, we sat at the table to discuss these matters. Even if you want to vary it, bring us to the table, let's agree. Because unions will not go and negotiate for it to affect only a selected few. In this case, for what we call those who are duty bearers. Majority of our members are not duty bearers, and they commute from their various homes to campus. So how do you freeze the amounts that they are getting for off-campus as well as car maintenance allowance, and then limit the payments to only the duty bearers who also commute from their homes to the same workplace? And so this is what we find as something anomalous which must be addressed. But unfortunately, the government side seems not to be giving a listening ear to this simple request. We were thinking that we have had a very relatively peace since we called off the last strike, and this ought not to have happened. But it appears that is not working.
But how strong is this for it to compel you to lay down your tools like you are threatening?
Yes, it is strong because we all know the current economic crisis that we are in. So if I'm buying fuel at, say, 11 cedis or even more, and I have accepted that you have given me 10.9 and I'm using it, and you say no, you want to freeze it and reverse it to 6.0, I'm buying the fuel now more than twice what I was buying last 2 years or last year. And so this is very significant so far as our members are concerned, because this is something that affects everybody on campus, not just those who are heads of departments, deans, provosts, or even say provincials and vice chancellors. It affects everybody. And so something that affects the core of our members or the majority of our members, we think that is something very strong that we need to speak to.
But in the times we are, the parent of the child whom you teach is going through this, and he probably is not even paid any allowance. He only takes a salary. Why aren't you thinking about him to teach his child, but you say that I'm going to go on strike if that's not paid me?
Yes, strike is not our first option. In most instances.
So aspects of what's happening on campus there. And Honorable Isaac Adongo, some of the teacher unions already threatening to strike because of issues of allowances which are being revised. And they say regardless of the economic condition, they still want to be giving all of the, compensation. So there's going to be a big challenge for government going forward. It appears that we've lost Honorable Isaac Adongo there. But let's cross you over now to the Ministry of Education, where, of course, currently there's agency dialogue to look at the absorption of Ghanaian students returning from war on Ukraine. The meeting comes in the wake of some reports that the final year, all prospective doctors who did their practical works and component of their professional course virtually due to the outbreak of the war there outside Ghana will not be allowed to practice here in Ghana. According to the Medical and Dental Council, September 16 was that final assessment window, which means that technically speaking, all doors have been shut to prospective doctors who did not participate in that test organized for the returnee students. So let's get more answers from this and cross you over to the Ministry of Education, where, of course, the Presidential Advisor on Health, in your shots there, Dr. Nsia Ansari, giving some clarity to matters.
Yes, you see, Ghana is the only country, as I said, which accepted, even during the war, they were doing their courses. The Ukraine course ends in May, June. Yeah. We said that it doesn't matter. All those who couldn't finish their final year, but they took the online courses and finished in May, June. Most of them have registered with Medical and Dental Council to do the qualifying exams to be accepted as a doctor in this country of provisional certificate to do their housemanship. So after we did this course, because we know that some of them didn't avail themselves, because I'm sure they are still doing online courses. You see, in medicine, especially in clinical medicine, I'm a doctor, so I can say it. You cannot say that you've done online course for the rest of your clinical courses and then you're a doctor. I don't think you allow anybody who has done online courses alone to come and see you. I know that some people are comparing that, now we are doing it because of international IA, people are now doing even virtual surgeries and all this. But that person has trained as a doctor. He has done postgraduate training and gone to do specialized training as a robotic surgeon or something, or he can sit somewhere and do telemedicine and train somebody. But not just straight from medical school and say that you finish your medical school online. I don't think you allow such a doctor to see you. So we are guiding the public. And and protecting the public, and guiding the profession. So the Medical and Dental Council guides the profession and protects the public. There's a problem, a war in Ukraine. They are bombing all over the place. You see, when we started this, somebody asked a question, and I have to answer the person. Now look, these are students. There are students who had 6 A's, 7 A's, and couldn't get to medical school. These are students, maybe he didn't even get 2 A's. So why can such a student come and then take a place in the medical school, while somebody who got 7 A's couldn't get a place in the medical school? And the answer I gave was that these are students who saw bombs flying through the windows. So they have a special issue. And we are giving them a special attention. As the president said that, he brought them home. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs took flights there and brought them home, chartered flights. Initially, they were coming in their numbers. Later on, I think one of the flights went there and took only about 4 students. They've all left. It's their choice. But what the students is talking about, I know about it, because I was a head of a hospital, a CEO of Komfanochi Teaching Hospital before. So we have such arrangements. They are the students who, when they finish their course, I think the last year they come for what you call attachment. It's done everywhere. I can leave medical school here and go and attach myself to a hospital in Nigeria and do the in-person course with the medical students, they see patients, and then when I finish, I go back to my university and go and write my final exams. But not to sit in Ghana, do online course, and say that my university has a range of a hospital. Which hospital? I don't see any of them in hospitals that their university have a range of. And if in the final year of the medical school, or if you are doing medical education, even in Ghana here, there are hospitals which are accredited to do medical education, which can do clinical training. So where did you go to do your clinical attachment? And luckily for them, it's only here, the whole world, Ghana, who has opened the way that let's integrate these students. We didn't do it even for only Ghanaian students. We accepted that there are some of our neighbors. There are people from Lesotho, from Nigeria, who applied. We open up because we know the number of students who are in Ukraine doing medicine. So we're expecting that we want to see over about 300, 400, 500 students. But when we went through, first, we have to delay because we had a deadline that we are going to finish this thing within this. So let's give them another 1 week. Let's give them another 1 week. We're talking to them. We are consulting them. We put all these things on the students' platform and on parents' platform. The first time we came here, the parents all came to meet us here. They were crying that we don't know what to do for us. So they said we are going to integrate each and every one. And we told them that none of them will be asked not to if you are qualified. So what we did, what GTED did for us is the admission. What the universities did and the Medical Dental Council coordinated the exams is for placement. So avail yourself. If I'm one of them and I'm doing online course, I'll even come and then test myself. And I also want to add here that we didn't charge any student a peso. Ask any of them. We look for money to pay for this. And I'm very happy to say that, for example, World Health Organization country representative plus the Afro country head heard this thing and said that we are going to sponsor it and gave us money to cover it. Because we are going to do an exam, we are going to bring people from their stations, we have to give them per diem, we have to make sure that they eat and all these things. They covered it up. We just spoke to them and they were happy that Ghana is doing this. So we said, come and do this exam. Come and, I don't even call it assessment. And you said, no, I'm doing online course. So go ahead and do your online course. But we will not allow people who have not seen patients to sit down, because if this war, nobody knows when it's going to end. So if you are in the first year and you continue to do online course, as for the university, they'll be happy to collect your money. We heard it that they said the academic year is ending, so they should come and pay. Some parents were worried. That's the reason why we said that we will finish everything that we are doing so that they can enter the next academic year, which is starting in September, October, and some of them in January. Some of them have even started. So the students who have been placed will have to go quickly to their schools and go and do the academic year. And I said, no, I'll continue this and then sit down and then come and say, why don't you allow me to use my online course to register in Ghana and see who? Going to see only your relatives or going to see people in Ghana? I will not allow such person to see me when I'm sick. But I don't know. I'm a potential patient. All of us are potential patients. You don't know where we will meet the person on the street or in a hospital. So please, that's how it is. And I think we've done this. We've opened this avenue. It's a lifetime avenue once. We open it, and when the Nigerians heard it, they were all surprised. Everybody said, hey, you've done well. And we are even convincing them to do the same thing for their people. But if you don't take advantage of it, it's a free world. So you don't come back and complain to anybody. And I'm very happy that Medical and Dental Council, after the exams, they didn't do it before the exams. It was after the exams on 23rd of September, gave this statement that we will not, and they said that they will not register anybody who does online course. And we all know that Ukraine has a problem. There's war in Ukraine. So there's no way that you can go and sit in the hospital and see patients in Ukraine. So the hospitals I know have even been bombed. So how are you going to do the online course? But I don't blame them. They are university. They are still in their offices doing the online course to collect their fees and everything. That's why it's happening. But we are taking note of this, and we want to make sure as a country that we also increase the number of students that we can take in this country to train them. And plans are far ahead to make sure that we do this and do it very well and decentralize medical education. Once we decentralize medical education, we can take more students and train them because we need a lot of doctors. Now we are putting up about 101 hospitals, district hospitals, and 7 regional hospitals and 3 psychiatric hospitals. We need doctors, we need nurses, we need health professionals. So any way that we can increase the number of our doctors in this country, we'll do it. And that's one of the reasons we didn't want about 900 students who are in Ukraine, who are doing medicine, to just stop their courses and then come and sit home. That's why the president said, do everything possible to integrate these students into our universities here in Ghana. So the way was open. We opened the avenue. The universities were very willing to assist us because we are not in normal times. And I'm very happy the students who have taken part in this assessment, and we wish them well. And those who didn't take part, wherever they are, as the Medical and Dental Council said, if you want to come back to this country and work, then go to one of the schools anywhere in this world who are doing in-person training. When you come, you won't have any.
And be sure that we'll definitely get you some updates about, of course, the Presidential Advisor on Health, who happens to be chairing that interministerial committee, giving some clarity on the integration of Ghanaian students returning from Ukraine, who are mostly medical students, who are being integrated into our Ghanaian public universities. You had of some updates there as to the closed window for those who would have to take their final test and assessment to be taking into the stream coming on next academic year. We'll wait to see what then will happen. But of course, the live pictures there coming through from the Ministry of Education. Be sure that we'll give you some updates as and when we have them. But for now, let's talk about Member of Parliament for the Edansi Asokwa area constituency in the Ashanti region, Katie Hammond. He's come under intense criticism on social media for shaming some young people who actually hooted and heckled the president at the just ended Global Citizens Festival over the weekend. Footages of the president went viral on social media, showing some patrons at the event heckling the president when he mounted the stage to deliver a speech reacting to the issue. Katie Hammond berated those who actually heckled the president, saying it is un-Ghanaian and reflects poorly on the image of the country.
On that. I think it's scandalous. I think it's scandalous. I don't think as a nation we got into that stage. I mean, I was petrified when I heard it. The president was speaking as soon as he opened his mouth. I heard, was it in unison? But if it's that small cabal, whatever it is, I mean, I was, let me repeat the word, petrified. Basically, they didn't understand. I haven't seen anything of this sort in Ghana before. We shouldn't start things which become precedent. You can't handle them. You let the genie out of the bottle, completely difficult to get our lives together. I have been very, very upset. I haven't seen anything like this before. Even on political platforms, we don't do these things. We don't. I mean, so to imagine that on the national platform like this, a president mounts the platform, and all he said, I think he said in Cree, that the whole of the world or the whole of it's here, and then people start shouting at him. I think it is unfair. We must be ashamed of ourselves. I don't think it is a proper development in our country. And too much shouting connotes an absence of intelligent thinking. So, you know, we're always shouting and shouting. You're not thinking. You know what I mean? You're not thinking. No, you're drawing the president. Who doesn't know that times are hard? I mean, it's not debatable. We all accept that times are hard. Look, yesterday I was asking the system, I was asking democracy. It isn't right. There should be some respect, you know. In Pennsylvania, my more, they be America. As somebody say, Yankapa, yeah, say, Yakwaku, Abrewa. Yanka say, Yako, whom Mono Muguana, Muti, I say, Kubeda Muguano. Yamon, yes, Yako, whom, yes, Yakwaku, whom Abrewa. Abrewano a penny.
So that comment is beginning to create a lot of tension on social media, I should call it that way, with a lot of young persons taking to social media to criticize the Member of Parliament. Let's bring in the Economic Fighters League. They believe that the Member of Parliament, I should say, Katie Amon ought to retract and possibly apologize for his comments. Let's speak now to Hadi Mohamed Yakubu, Fighter General of the Economic Fighters League. First of all, Hadi, I need to find out from you. Some say this is a clear verdict on the president's performance in terms of handling the economy and creating prosperity for the youth. What's the take of the Economic Fighters League on this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Blessed, and I hope you are having a blessed afternoon. It is very obvious that this is a very damning verdict on the leadership of Akufo-Addo and the MPP government. It is just like how prior to 2016 people were so despondent and very frustrated at the economic situation that, you know, they would go every length to criticize the president of the day at that time. It is to say that the economy of the country has not improved. In fact, it has got worse. Debt levels have become unsustainable.
Hadi, if you're still with us, you're making a point about how this is casting a verdict on the performance of government on this. Yes, we lost you briefly, Hadi.
Yes, sorry about that. So it is very clear that this is a very damning verdict on the leadership of the president, and not only the president, even Katie Hammond and his colleagues. I mean, this is very, very, very clear. And I note very interestingly that Katie Hammond said that he has never seen anything like this before. And I think that for anybody who thinks about, reflects, who has deep reflections, Katie Hammond should know what the times have spelled for the people. I mean, if it is just about hooting that you care so much about, then what about people who wake up in the morning these days and are not able to afford cocoa and kose or kenke and fish? What about people who can no longer buy gobe? What about people who can no longer afford to pay school fees or pay rent?
He says if you want to do that, criticize constructively. Don't disrespect the president. That's his opinion on this matter.
Who determines what sort of criticism is disrespect? Who determines that? And I think we should do away with this mentality that the elderly are ipso facto entitled to be revered. No, respect is earned, blessed. Respect is earned.
Yeah, I mean, just take a look at this. This is the president who comes to a political concert. This is not a political rally. He comes across, wants to deliver a goodwill message, and then he's been heckled on a global stage.
The fact that it wasn't a political platform is even the more reason why this is so ominous, why this is so clear a message to the president and his leadership and all those people who are advising him. And I think the president should be very careful about people like Katie Hammond. If this is the sort of if he has any sort of access to the president, and this is the kind of advice that he will give him, I think Katie Hammond, the president, should be very careful about people like that, because they will not be people who can look him in the eyes and tell him the truth, that the youth are very agitated, the youth are frustrated. Look, the national security did their own strategic document. And in some event in Accra some time ago, they mentioned it, that lack of opportunity, lack of employment, and all of these things are raising tensions in the populace. So if you see this kind of thing, it is actually a very good way for people to vent their frustration at somebody that they have employed. And note, this is not somebody who has come to lord over us. This is somebody that we have employed, somebody who is surviving, both him and his family, on our taxes. So we have every right to show in any way that we are dissatisfied with the kind of leadership that he is providing. And it doesn't lie with the likes of Katie Hammond, who also lives on our taxes, by the way, to come and tell us what sort of criticism constitutes respect or disrespect. But of course, I mean, why would you blame him? He says that the youth have nothing in our heads, and we have coconut. In fact, he has to know that coconut is not empty. Coconut is actually very, very useful. These days we use coconut for a whole lot of things.
Right.
Yes, coconut is not empty. Coconut is a very, very useful thing. So if he says we have coconut on our head, for me, I think I prefer coconut, somebody who has coconut as a head, to somebody who has a chamber pot as a head.
Well, anyway, that's.
I would prefer coconut to a chamber pot.
That's on a
I'm happy
lighter
that
note.
he didn't say chamber pot. Blessed. I'm happy he said coconut because it is very, very useful. But I think there is need for anybody who has reflection to sort of ask themselves why we have got to a point where a very conservative society, where reverence is naturally given to the elderly, has got to a point where young people have the courage and confidence to hoot at the president of the land. It must tell you something. And if you are somebody who reflects, then this must be a wake-up call. And I'm saying that for people like Katie Hammond, I think that caliber, that sort of mentality, that if this kind of thing happens and it is shameful, is something that the president should take very keen note about and must not allow himself to be deceived by people like Katie Hammond.
And on that note, you say that he needs to apologize to the Ghanaian youth. Why?
Well, you see, Katie Hammond can say what he has said because I mean, he's somebody who has been in parliament for long. And what does he have to show for it? And people keep voting for him. And the truth is that if today a ballot box is put before the people of Ghana, they will still go and vote. In 2020, we campaigned that the options that were on the table were completely useless, and therefore people should boycott the elections. But people still went and voted, and people voted for the likes of Katie Hammond. Now, what has he to show for all the years in parliament that he had? And even somebody who has absented himself for several, in the last parliament, in the 7th parliament, Katie Hammond actually was one of the 53 MPs who violated the Article 97(2) of the Constitution, which says that MPs must not absent themselves 15 times or more without permission of the Speaker. Analysis by Odikro showed that Katie Hammond did that, and nothing happened to him. So, of course, he would have the audacity and the temerity to come out and insult people this way. He would have that. If systems had been working, if they had been good enough, if the older generation had been good enough to rule this country the way it ought to have been designed, and systems were working, Katie Hammond would not have been in parliament today. He wouldn't, because he would have been kicked out by that provision of the Constitution. So, I mean, I don't blame him for having the temerity to say what he has to say. And I think that we need to make a distinction. Also, the young people, we also need to be very careful not to lump old people together, because there are some very sensible and very reasonable old people out there who admit that the older generation has completely failed this country, and that we, the young people, ought to re-energize and take leadership and make sure that we turn things around for ourselves and for our children.
Hadi, we'll wrap up our conversation. Yeah, we'll wrap up our conversation taking a look at culture. But just before I come to that point, I want to bring in some of the comments on social media, for instance, how some persons have been reacting to Katie Hammond. So you have excerpts on your screens right now. For instance, this is from David Ofori Aye. He says the Honorable Katie Hammond and Ado administration has completely deflated any belief in that abroad, which is to go to the extent of what Katie Hammond was talking about, reverence for the elderly. At his age, Ghanaians expected a selfless, committed, honest, and dedicated leader who believed in Ghana. The president has served the youth with a hot dish of disappointment and hopelessness. What he witnessed was actually the objective reality of how the youth and the rest of the people feel. Then there's also Idrisu Abudu, who says that, but even for Katie Hammond himself, what wisdom has he ever exhibited that shows that he is a grown-up person? All his thoughts and acts, well, that's quite a bit harsh. So Idrisu, you might want to calm down a bit on that one. So these are some of the comments coming through. For the sake of time, Hadi, let's just get to the issue about culture. Where we place culture in all of this? And some of the reaction, very harsh comments we're seeing on social media come up against Katie Hammond.
Well, Blessed, I think we ought to discuss culture within a context. Culture is not a static phenomenon. Culture is an evolving social phenomenon. And so human beings react to situations, and those situations become ways of life. And what are we reacting to now in this kind of situation? People are reacting to bad leadership, nepotistic leadership, leadership that is full of corruption and also completely devoid of any sympathy for the people. Leadership that is full of corruption, that is full of stealing, that is full of any sort of misgovernance that you can characterize. So people will react to it, and they are not going to react to it, in a kind way. And as I keep saying, people think that in our society, whatever an elderly person does must be taken for granted. No, we cannot continue to do that. If old people misbehave, they must be put in their position.
Let's wrap up in 30 seconds.
It's supposed to be end.
Right. Very briefly, we're wrapping up, Hadi. What would you do as the Economic Fighters League if Katie Hammond, for instance, refuses to apologize?
No, Blessed. We are not going to waste time on things like this. He's entitled to his opinion just as much as we are also entitled to our opinion. So he can, as I said earlier, it is good that he said that you have coconuts, and I know coconut is very useful. I'm happy we don't have heads that look like chamber pot. And I think maybe people who have been in government or leadership or parliament or wherever for a very long time with very little to show would probably want to assess themselves whether it is coconuts they have or chamber pots.
Yeah, but on a lighter note, you have the same beard he's complaining about. He says you carry about beards these days and you don't respect at all in terms of how the youth treat the elderly these days. But we need to go. We need to wrap up. I'm grateful so much.
No, but I'm saying that respect is earned. And I think that one of the things that has actually held us back as a society is the issue of not questioning the elderly when they do something wrong. We must have the boldness to question the elderly when they do something wrong. It doesn't mean we should disrespect. It doesn't mean we should shame or do anything like that. But if they don't do something wrong, we must have the boldness and must have the courage to question. If I grow old, I wouldn't mind if a young person comes to tell me that, Ofa, you are not making sense. I wouldn't mind. If I'm not making sense, I must be told in the face that I'm not making sense. But if you are not making sense, if all this we have seen over the years, over the last several years that they have been in power, this elderly generation, this is the kind of system that they have built for us. And so if we cannot voice out freely that this system that you have given to us is an away sort of system, then what kind of society are we building? Are we timid souls? No. We cannot continue this way. So they must take this as a lesson. Akufo-Addo must take this as a lesson. Katie Hammond must take this as a lesson and make sure that they amend their ways and rule with compassion and with competence and with sound governance principles. In that way, when next they come on stage, it will be praises and claps rather than hooting.
Okay, what have to...
But if they continue this way, maybe something worse will happen.
Thank you so much, Hadi Yakubu with the Economic Fighters League. And that's all we have for you today on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. More updates for you there.